This is the day we've all been waiting for so long. Freaking Aptera is actually going to make it. I'm still speculating a lot. There could be unknown unknowns, but in their latest update video, they gave us the update everybody's been looking for. They found a partner that can fund their path to production in its entirety. This has been a huge skeptical point for a lot of people out there, especially after Aptera, even after running one of the most successful crowdfunding campaigns in history, it was still not quite enough to get them all the way into volume production, and I really want to emphasize that here. This whole production path that they're talking about funding is intended to reach high volume production, okay? So we're not talking about being able to build a couple of these things. We're talking about building thousands and thousands of Aptera for the world, and the reason I get so pumped about that is because we've just seen so much negative press around solar-powered EVs. There's been so many attempts at it that have failed, and a lot of skeptics were out there trying to imagine that, oh, any day now they're going to announce bankruptcy or one of those, save Aptera campaigns, but nope. Instead of that, we're actually starting to see big money from investment groups. Aptera's partner is US Capital Global, who has made major investments in the past, actually see the value in solar mobility. Thank you, by the way, for someone actually stepping up and realizing this is a great idea. Over 40,000 paid reservations for this thing, incredible specifications. Of course, I feel like it's inevitable that vehicles like this are going to exist because batteries are the most expensive component of an EV. So it only seems logical to me that the company with the biggest emphasis on efficiency with the smallest possible battery packs to get the most amount of range is going to result in the quickest path towards profitability, therefore the least amount of risk for the big investor. And that's kind of the other exciting part from this announcement that makes it feel just that much more real, is the fact that Aptera is putting their money where their mouth is. It'd be one thing if they just said, okay, we've got a path towards production funding now, thanks to this big investor that's come on board. But also, if you'd like to keep the crowdfunding coming, we'll keep taking your money. But that's actually not what happened. In this same update video, they announced the closure of the crowdfunding. This is kind of a monumental moment for the company too, because the crowdfunding all started about 3 years ago. That was before even the accelerator program began. And I know in the past I've said EV companies, especially EV startups, they don't have the most guaranteed path to profitability, which is why I've always been telling people you shouldn't be putting your life savings into EV stocks. It's just such a new field. We don't know what's going to be happening. But while I'm not giving any investment advice in today's video, and I never will, I'm not a financial advisor, I personally just have to admit that a company with the quickest path towards profitability out of all other EV brands, doesn't that feel like the safest route to go if you were going to invest in an EV startup? I don't know. Obviously, you never want to put in money that you can't afford to lose in a startup like this, but knowing that Aptera has a firm cutoff date on the crowdfunding now of June 30th, which is less than 2 months away, means that, you know what? We could keep asking for it, but we don't need it anymore. We've secured funding from the big guys. The big investors are coming on board now. They also seem to have a great amount of success in the UAE with their latest trip over there. The Gamma prototype ripping it up on the track. They've got production intent battery packs being tested and calibrated right now, and they're doubling down on 2025 being the year that they can reach production again at a high volume stage, not just a couple of units off the line. And that gets me really, really pumped for the future. The fact that I really want to emphasize this. They are not literally required to shut off the crowdfunding. They don't have to, but they are choosing to because they feel, okay, we've reached the stage where we know that funding is coming and we're going to be able to ramp up vehicle production with the funding that's being provided by this new big partner, and we don't have any need for the general public to invest in us until we IPO, which Aptera has mentioned many times in the past they intend to, similar to Rivian, IPO the company at the same time as deliveries begin, which in my opinion is honestly the best, most optimum time to IPO, because we've seen far too many other EV companies that IPO long before deliveries begin, and it just sets up weird standards for the company, and it makes it a lot more of a hypothetical stock, and waiting to IPO until you actually have a product that is out in consumers' hands, I think is a much better idea, and I hope more EV startup companies focus on doing that in the future. The big question, though, that we still don't have the details on yet is what was the terms of this deal with US Capital Global. Some people think it's a debt deal where Aptera has to pay them back. Some people think it's an equity deal where this company owns a certain percentage of the brand. My speculative answer is dequity. Is that a term? I think that's kind of a term. Yeah, in the comments online, Aptera has already said that they will share the details of the deal at a later date, but right now they're not ready to disclose it yet. But my point is, regardless of which deal they go with, I honestly think both are still a really good sign. So let's entertain both for the sake of this video. We're just gonna speculate together. Let's say it's just a debt deal, okay? So US Capital Global gives Aptera a loan of $65 million in order to get their vehicle into mass production. For one, I still see that as a good sign because it means that a very large investment group is now comfortable with the state of Aptera as a startup company. They're seeing their operating expenses, they're seeing all of the funding they've put forward and all of the California backing for manufacturing equipment. A bank wouldn't make a $65 million loan if they didn't believe that the company would be capable of paying it back, right? So they must have done their due diligence and looked at the state of the company and said, okay, you guys are looking pretty good, so we'll loan you the money because we trust you enough to pay it back. Doesn't make a lot of sense to try to bankrupt these startup companies with debt deals because then the bank isn't able to, get their money back, especially with the state of other EV startups like Fisker Ocean these days. I can understand why a lot of big investment firms would be skeptical with these debt deals. The other upside of it purely being a debt deal is it means that Aptera did not have to give up much control of the company. If it was mainly focused on debt, then that means that all of the shares everybody has continues to be worth about the same, and they'll have lots of shares available for more people, of course, when they do the official IPO. And the original Aptera board and the original co-founders of Aptera get to maintain voting rights and all that stuff, so they get to run the company how they want to run it. Well, let's entertain the alternative scenario. Maybe US Capital Global invested and owns now a major stake in Aptera, which is possible. We don't know the deals, but that indicates that they don't have a big loan to pay off, and while they may not have as many shares to go around when they IPO, that technically would push the share price a lot higher because they're going to have less shares available, but it just means that the company is probably going to reach profitability a lot faster. Yes, taking on more debt for the overall company does mean that Aptera would have to reach a higher volume production amount in order to become profitable, but again, we don't know the contracts of this deal. It's possible that because they're a big company with a fairly good margined vehicle with lots of demand, perhaps the interest rates were pretty reasonable, better than what we could have gotten as individual consumers. So I'm very excited to find out more about this deal that they've got going on, but seeing them actually announce a closing date for the crowdfunding, I say is a very, very good sign because they are not required to do that. That means they're like saying thank you for everybody who's been supporting us over the years, but we don't need to do semi-public crowdfunding anymore. Again, invest at your own risk. I've never told anybody they should invest in Aptera unless they're a billionaire. But after yesterday's announcement, it honestly feels like Aptera is closer to production than ever before, and they've got some PI builds that they're going to be showing off within the coming months that will have production-grade exteriors, interiors, powertrains, all that stuff, which I'm very excited to check out again, hopefully in person in the not-too-distant future. So what do you guys think of this huge announcement? Feel free to let me know your thoughts on Aptera down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.